Hello and welcome. In this video, I'll walk you through each step of filling the DS-160 form. You could use this video as a guide while filling your DS-160 form. Now the DS-160 form has several sections. So in the description of this video, I have mentioned the timestamp where I begin each section. So if you need help in filling a particular section, you could directly go to the timestamp associated with that section and that should help. I hope you find this video useful. Now the first section of the DS-160 is your personal information section. And the first fields there are your surname and given name. Now make sure you enter your surname and given name exactly as mentioned on your passport. Now in case there is no surname mentioned on your passport, that is the surname field on your passport is blank, then whatever is mentioned as given names on your passport should be mentioned under the surnames in the DS-160 and the given name should be written as FNU. Your full name in native alphabets say does not apply. The next question, have you ever used other names? Say no to this. The only time you should say yes to this is if you have had an official name change done or in case of female applicants who have changed names post marriage. Now do not say yes to this question just because the names on your transcripts mark sheets are slightly different from that on your passport. The next question, do you have a telecode to represent your name? Say no. And the rest of the information fill it exactly as mentioned on your passport. And continue to the next section. Now here country would be India. The next two questions would be no in most cases. Regarding national identification number, now you can either enter your Aadhaar card or just say does not apply. Either one is fine. If you have lived or worked in the US before and have a US social security number and taxpayer's ID, then enter those details here. Else just say does not apply and continue to the next section. The next section is the travel information section. Here under the question purpose of your trip to the US, select academic or language student and under specify select student F1. In the next question where it asks, have you made specific travel plans? Say no. Now even if you have booked your tickets to the US, you should say no to this answer. In the next question where it asks about the intended date of arrival, put an approximate date of arrival. Now it does not mean that you have to travel or arrive in the US on this very exact date, but you can just put an approximate date. In the intended length of stay in the US, put in the approximate number of years you think you will take to complete your education. Again, this need not be exact. If you are a bachelor student, you can put in 4 years. If you are a master student, you can put in 2 years. If your master's degree is just a 1 year degree or a 9-month program, you could put in 1 year. If you're a PhD student, you could put in 5 years. Now, whatever you mention here has no impact on the duration of your visa or the work permits that you will get after you complete your education. So just mention an approximate duration that you think you will take to complete your education. Regarding the address where you will stay in the US, now if you have already booked an apartment in the US, you could mention that address here, or you could simply mention your university's address. You could write the address as mentioned on your university's I-20, or you could pick up the university's address from your university's website. Any address that you mention here is absolutely fine. Now the next question about person or entity paying for your trip. Now the first thing you need to understand that the trip here does not just mean your air tickets to the US. It means the entire duration of your stay in the US. So in most cases, the best answer to this would be other person, where you mention the name of your parent or sponsor. Now even if you have availed an education loan and your education loan is co-signed by your parent or your sponsor, you could select other person and mention the details of your parent or sponsor here. Now only in cases where you are paying for your entire education by your own or have availed an education loan which is not co-signed by anybody, you could select self as the entity paying for your trip. Now just because you have availed an education loan, do not select other company or organization as the entity paying for your trip and mention your loan lender's details here. The only time you should select this option is if your entire education is funded by an external agency or the university. In that case, select other company or organization as the entity paying for the trip and mention the universities or the external agencies details here. Now the next question is about travel companions information. Here it asks, are there other persons traveling with you? Now in most cases the answer to this should be no. The only time you should say yes is if you are married and your spouse and or children are traveling with you on an F2 visa. But just because you are traveling along with friends, or maybe your parents or someone else is also accompanying you but they are on a different visa, you should not say yes to this question. So say no to this question and continue to the next section. The next section is the previous US travel information section. In this section, the first question is, have you ever been in the US? Say yes if you have lived or ever been to the US. If no, say no. If you say yes, it will ask you for an approximate date when you arrived in the US. Now, in case you don't remember the exact date, that's absolutely fine. Just put in an approximate date and mention the amount of time that you lived in the US. I'll say no here at this moment. The next question it asks, have you ever been issued a US visa? Now, if you hold any kind of US visa, be it a tourist visa, a past student visa, a work visa, say yes to this. If no, say no. Now, when you say yes, it asks you for the details about your visa. So, when was the visa issued, the visa number. Uh, Again, it will ask you, are you applying for the same type of visa? Now, if your earlier visa was also an F1 visa, then say yes, else say no. It will ask you then, are you applying in the same country or location where the visa was issued? If your earlier visa was also issued from a consulate in India, say yes, else say no. Now it could be any consulate in India. So for instance, say earlier you went to the Mumbai consulate for the visa, but this time you are applying from the Delhi consulate, you would still say yes to this question as long as the visa was issued from a consulate in India. In case your earlier visa was issued from a consulate outside India and now you are applying for a visa within India, then you say no, else say yes. Have you been 10 printed? Now, many times you may not remember this whether you have been 10 printed or not. 10 printing is where they take fingerprints of all your 10 fingers against only two fingers, that is only your thumbs. So, if you don't remember this, just say no to that. Uh, has your US visa ever been lost or stolen? Say no, Aman, if that's the case. If it's yes, then say yes. And has your visa ever been cancelled or revoked? Again, if no, then say no. Now this is again only if you have been issued a US visa before. Now the next question is about your past visa refusals. Now if you ever had a visa refusal in the past, now it could be any kind of visa application that was refused. It could be a tourist visa application or a work visa or a past student visa application was refused. You will have to say yes here. When you say yes, it will ask you to explain. Now, in the explanation, only mention the kind of visa that was refused and the approximate date on which it was refused. Now, in case you have had multiple visa refusals in the past, mention all the visa refusals that you have had in the past. But don't write an explanation on why you think the visa was refused. So, only write the type of visa that was refused and the approximate date on which it was refused. The next question asks if anyone has ever filed an immigrant petition on your behalf. Now, if someone has filed a PR or a green card application for you, say yes, else say no, and move ahead to the next section. The next section is address and phone information. Now, here mention the address that you currently reside at. This need not correspond to the address that is mentioned on the last page of your passport. As far as US visa applications are concerned, the address on the passport does not matter at all. So here mention the address that is your current address and you will not be required to provide any proof of address whatsoever. So mention your current address and if your mailing address is the same as this current home address, say yes, else say no and provide an alternate mailing address. The next question is about your phone numbers. So mention your primary phone numbers. If you have another phone number, you can mention that, but even if you don't, it's absolutely fine. It then asks you, have you ever used any other phone numbers in the past 5 years? If yes, say yes. If no, say no. Mention your email ID. Again, if you have multiple email IDs, mention those. Even if you say no, that is also absolutely fine. Then the last questions are about your social media handles. Now, if you are active on some of the social medias, mention those. If you're absolutely dormant on some of the social media handles, you need not mention those. But I would recommend mention all the active social media handles that you currently use. And then continue to the next section. The next section is the passport information section. Under the passport or travel document type, select regular. Enter your passport number. The passport book number say does not apply. Then enter the other details of your passport, such as city of issuance, state, the passport issuance date, expiry date, and then below it asks, has your passport ever been lost or stolen? If no, say no, but if yes, say yes and enter the passport number that was stolen. And under explanation, say passport was lost or stolen on so and so date. The next section is the US point of contact information section. Here, under contact person name, you can say do not know, and under organization name, you can put in the name of your university. Relationship to you would be school official, and mention the university's address. You could either mention the address on the I-20 or pick up the address from the university's website. You can pick up the phone number too from the university's website, and under email address, say does not apply. Now, even if you have siblings or parents or friends or relatives living in the US, do not mention their name and details under US point of contact. Since you are applying for a student visa, mention the university's details only as the US point of contact. In the family information section, it asks about the name and date of birth of your parents. Now, sometimes the name of your parents might appear different on different documents, like their passport might have a different name, their Aadhaar card might have a different name, the bank account statements might have a different name. In that case, mention the name as mentioned at the back of your passport. If either of your parents are in the US, say yes, else say no. In the next question, it asks if you have immediate relatives in the US. Now, here by immediate relatives, they only mean a fiance, a spouse, a child, or a sibling, that is, a brother or a sister. If yes, say yes and provide the details of your immediate relative who is in the US. If you say no to that answer, it then asks you another question if you have other relatives in the US. If yes, say yes to that. Say, for example, you have a cousin or uncle or someone else in the US, say yes to it. Now, while answering questions about your immediate or other relatives, please be honest. Saying yes to either of these questions is not in any way going to affect the chances of getting a visa. In the next section on present work, education, and training, select whatever is your current occupation. Now, if you are currently working, select whatever is the best fit for your occupation. You may sometimes find that your exact occupation is not listed in the drop down list. So, select whatever is the closest fit. Once you select your present occupation, it will then ask you details about your present employer. In the present employer's name, mention your company's full name, then mention your company's address, the phone number, and in the start date, mention the date you started working with the company. In the monthly income, mention your income in Indian rupees. Do not mention the income in US dollars or any other currency. If you are working outside India, then mention your income in that particular currency. In the briefly describe your duties section, mention your duties in just one or two sentences. Do not write a lot. Just one or two sentences describing your duties is sufficient enough. If you are still in school or college, or very recently over the past 1 or 2 months completed your school or college, you could select student as your primary occupation. There, under present employer or school name, mention your school or college's name and mention the address and phone number of your school or college. In the start date, if you don't remember the exact start date, just put in your approximate start date. The monthly income would not apply. And in the briefly describe your duties section, just mention the course that you are currently enrolled in or the one that you recently graduated from. For instance, you could say, I recently completed my 12th grade, or I recently graduated with a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, or whatever applies in your case. Just a sentence describing the course that you are currently enrolled in or the one that you graduated from is good enough. You need not write a lot about it. Now, in case it's been more than 3 months since you graduated from college and are currently not working, or you recently left your job and are not currently working, you could select not employed as your primary occupation. As an explanation, you could mention the reasons for your unemployment and what you have been doing during this unemployment period. For instance, I have written here that I graduated in June 2022 and have been working on my master's application since then. I also completed an online course in Python. Now, in case you left your job to take up some online courses or develop some new skills, you could write about that. Whatever applies in your case, you can explain and write about that. A 2 to 3 line explanation is generally sufficient enough. In the previous work, education, and training information, mention details of all companies or organizations that you have worked for in the past 5 years. Now, if you have already mentioned your present employer's details in the earlier section, do not repeat it here. Under employer's name, mention the name of the company or organization that you work for. Mention the address and phone number of your company. Under job title, mention the last job title that you held when you worked for the company. Mention the name of your manager back then under supervisor's name. If you don't remember those details, just say do not know. Put in the start and end date of your employment. Again, if you don't remember the exact start and end date, put in approximate dates. Under briefly describe your duties, mention your roles and responsibilities in just a sentence or two. You do not have to write too much in detail. Now, in this previous employment section, you need not mention the internships that you worked on during college. Mention only the full-time jobs that you did after completing your graduation. In the previous educational institutions attended, mention details of all educational institutions that you attended after your 10th grade. If you attended a high school or junior college for your 11th and 12th, in the course of study, just mention academic. But if you did a diploma or a degree, for those, you mention the exact name of your diploma or degree. Say, for instance, you did a diploma in mechanical engineering after your 10th grade. In the course of study, mention diploma in mechanical engineering. If you did a bachelor's degree after your 12th grade, mention the exact name of your bachelor's degree in the course of study. Under dates attended, now if you don't remember the exact dates, that's also fine. Mention an approximate dates when you attended that educational institution. Now, in the previous section, under present work, educational, and training information, if you listed your primary occupation as student and mentioned your current educational institution's details there, then you need not repeat the same in this section. In the next section on additional work, education, training information, the first question is, do you belong to a clan or tribe? Say no. Under languages that you speak, mention all the languages that you speak. You will have to mention at least one language, so do definitely mention English. Have you traveled to other countries, regions within the last 5 years? If you have, say yes. If not, say no. If you say yes, you will have to list all the countries that you have traveled or visited in the past 5 years. Have you belong to, contribute to, or work for any professional, social, or charitable organization? Now, if you are active with any of such organizations, you can say yes and mention the names of the organizations, or just go ahead and say no. Regarding the other three questions, I mean, in most cases, your answers would be no. But in case you have worked with the military or served with the military, you can say yes to that and give details about the same. The security and background section has 5 parts. Now, ideally, the answer to all the questions in all the 5 parts should be a no. If, however, you feel that some question should be answered as a yes, then you will have to give a proper explanation for the same. Now, the first part of the student and exchange visa section is additional point of contact information. Now, here you will have to provide the name and details of two people other than family members or relatives, and those who are located in your home country, that is in India. Now, you could provide the names of two friends or neighbors or anybody whom you know. Now, the US consulate is not going to contact these people, so don't worry too much about it and just provide names of two, maybe friends or neighbors. Now, the last section of the DS-160 is the SEVIS Information section. Here you will have to provide your SEVIS details as mentioned on your I-20. Now sometimes you will realize that the course of study mentioned on your I-20 is slightly different from your actual course of study. Here on the DS-160, you could list either of it, the one that is mentioned on your I-20 or your actual course of study. Once you complete the section, click on review. Now once you click on review and you review every section of the DS-160 form, you will find the option to sign and submit. Once you click on sign and submit, it will ask you a question. Did anyone assist you in filling out this application? Say no to that, enter your passport number, the CAPTCHA code and sign and submit your application. Once you submit the DS-160 form, you will not be allowed to make any changes to the form. As a closing note, I would say, you don't need to complete and submit the DS-160 form to book your visa appointment. You only need to start your DS-160 form and you need to know your DS-160 number to book your visa appointment. You have up to 30 days to fill your DS-160 form. Any DS-160 form that is started and not submitted within 30 days gets automatically deleted from the system. So I would recommend that once you start a DS-160 form, remember to submit it within 30 days. Once a DS-160 form is submitted, it remains in the system forever. In case your DS-160 form gets deleted because it wasn't submitted within 30 days of starting, you will have to fill another DS-160 form and associate that with your visa application. Now you can fill as many DS-160 forms as you want. You also need to realize that once you submit a DS-160 form, you cannot edit it. So say for instance, after submitting a form, you realize that you made a mistake in the form. You will have to then fill another DS-160 form and associate that form in your visa application. Now, in case you make some minor errors in your DS-160 form, such as a spelling error in your address, or maybe a small spelling or grammatical error in your job description, then to rectify these errors, you need not fill a new DS-160 form. Such minor mistakes don't really matter. But in case you have made a major error, or you want to say, for instance, now change the university that you are going to, in that case, you will have to fill a new DS-160 form and associate the new DS-160 form with your visa application. I hope this video clarifies all your doubts about filling DS-160 forms. If you still have any questions, please do post them in the comments and I'll try my best to answer them. And please do subscribe to our channel. Thank you.